The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint rustling of trees outside the small house on the edge of the village. But inside, screams shattered the air. A woman's voice, trembling with agony, pleaded for mercy, yet the blows kept raining down. Her hair, once long and thick, had been hacked off crudely with scissors, tufts scattered across the floor like torn memories. Her in-laws stood over her, eyes burning with cruelty, blaming her for things she had never done. The humiliation was their weapon, and tonight they wanted to strip her not just of her dignity, but of her very identity. In the corner of the house, her daughter, Ayesha, only 20 years old, hid behind a half-open door. Her fists were clenched, nails digging into her palms as tears streamed down her face. She had seen cruelty before, but nothing like this. Tonight, they had crossed every limit. Her mother, the woman who had worked day and night to raise her after her father's death, was being broken piece by piece. Ayesha wanted to run to her, to shield her with her own body, but fear held her back. She had no power, no wealth, no allies. What could a girl like her do against a family that thrived on power and control? But as her mother's cries grew weaker, something inside Ayesha shifted. The trembling in her hands turned into a fire burning through her veins. Fear transformed into fury, and she knew she could no longer remain hidden in the shadows. Wiping her tears, she stepped out into the room, her voice trembling but firm. "Stop this," she shouted, her words slicing through the air. "You can't do this to her." The in-laws froze for a moment, startled by the sudden defiance. Then one of them sneered, "And what will you do, girl? You are just her daughter. You have no place here. If you interfere, we will throw both of you out on the streets." Ayesha's chest heaved as she stood tall, her body shaking but her spirit unyielding. "Then throw us out," she said, her voice gaining strength. "We will survive without your cruelty, but you will not touch her again." It was the first time anyone had spoken back to them, and though they laughed in mockery, they could not ignore the blazing fire in her eyes. They left the room with threats, leaving her mother bleeding and shorn, but Ayesha had won a small battle. She had shown them she was not afraid anymore. That night, as she tended to her mother's wounds, her heart broke seeing the once proud woman reduced to silence, her head bare, her soul crushed. She wanted to scream at the injustice, to tear down the walls that had allowed such cruelty to thrive. But more than anything, she wanted to give her mother back the dignity that had been stolen. It was in that darkest hour that fate brought someone into their lives who would change everything. His name was Imran, a young man from the same village, known for his quiet strength and kind heart. He had seen the way Ayesha's family suffered in silence, though he had never spoken of it openly. That night, when word spread about what had been done to Ayesha's mother, he could not keep quiet. Imran came to their small house the next morning. Ayesha opened the door, her eyes swollen from crying, her face pale but resolute. She was surprised to see him standing there, holding a bag of medicine and food. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. No one else in the village had dared to step forward. Most people were too afraid of her mother's in-laws. "I heard what happened," Imran said softly, his gaze steady but filled with sorrow. "I couldn't just sit and do nothing." Ayesha's lips trembled, but she stepped aside to let him in. Imran's eyes fell on her mother lying weakly on the bed, her head covered with a scarf, though nothing could hide the deep wounds and humiliation she had endured. He placed the medicine down carefully, his hands trembling with quiet rage. "This is not right," he said almost to himself. "No woman deserves this." For the first time in hours, Ayesha felt a strange sense of relief, as though someone had finally shared the burden she carried. She looked at him, searching his face for any sign of pity, but there was none, only respect and determination. Days turned into weeks, and Imran continued to visit, bringing whatever little help he could. He spoke gently to Ayesha's mother, encouraging her, reminding her that she was not alone. And each time he came, Ayesha felt her heart grow stronger, not because she depended on him, but because he reminded her that courage was contagious. But the challenges were far from over. Her in-laws grew angrier, furious that their victim was now receiving sympathy and support. They threatened to throw Ayesha and her mother out to ruin their reputation in the village. Rumors spread like wildfire, whispering that Ayesha was shameless for allowing a young man to visit their home so often. The gossip stung, but Ayesha held her head high. She had faced worse than words. Still, the weight of survival pressed heavily upon her. Money was scarce, her mother's health was fragile, and every day was a battle between hope and despair. One evening, after returning from work at the fields, Ayesha found her mother sitting quietly, her eyes filled with tears. "Why do you do this, Beta?" her mother whispered. "Why do you fight so hard for me? I am broken. Maybe it would be easier if I wasn't here." Ayesha fell to her knees, clutching her mother's hands. "Don't ever say that," she cried. "You are my strength. They can take everything from us, but I won't let them take you. As long as I am alive, I will fight for you." It was at that moment that Imran, who had come quietly to check on them, heard her words. He stepped forward, his voice firm yet tender. "And she will not fight alone," he said. Both mother and daughter looked up at him, startled. He took a deep breath, his eyes unwavering. "If the world wants to shame her, let them, but I will stand by her. I will make her my bride, and together we will give her mother the dignity she deserves." The words hung in the air, powerful and shocking. Ayesha's heart raced, her mind unable to process what she had just heard. Marriage, it was not something she had even dared to dream of in the midst of all this pain. But when she looked into Imran's eyes, she saw no hesitation, no pity, only a promise of partnership and strength. Ayesha froze in silence, her breath caught between disbelief and hope. Her mother's weak eyes widened, searching Imran's face for any sign of hesitation, but she saw only truth. The room felt different now, as if a storm had passed and left behind a fragile ray of sunlight. Yet beneath that light, doubts began to cloud Ayesha's heart. "You don't know what you're saying," she whispered, shaking her head. "If you marry me, they will destroy you too. My mother's in-laws are powerful, cruel. They will not forgive this insult. They will make you their enemy." Imran stepped closer, his voice steady. "Let them. I am not afraid of them. What they did to your mother was beyond cruelty, and if standing with you means becoming their enemy, then so be it. I would rather live with honor than bow to injustice." His words pierced through her doubts, but still Ayesha's heart trembled. She had dreamed of love once, like any young girl, but those dreams had been crushed by the daily struggle to protect her mother. Marriage had become a faraway thought, something she no longer believed she deserved. Now here was Imran, offering not just love, but a shield, a partnership, a chance to rewrite their future. Her mother, still lying weakly, tried to speak. "Beta, this is too much. Why would you tie your life to ours? We have nothing to give, only problems, only pain." Imran turned to her with gentle respect. "Ami, I am not asking for wealth or comfort. I am asking for a chance to build a life together with Ayesha. I see her strength, her courage, her heart. That is worth more than anything else in this world." Tears spilled down the older woman's cheeks, not from sorrow this time, but from the weight of a hope she thought she would never feel again. She pressed her daughter's hand into Imran's. "If you are willing, then may God bless you both." But the path ahead was not as simple as words spoken in a quiet room. When news spread in the village that Imran had declared his intention to marry Ayesha, the whispers turned into loud accusations. Some mocked him, calling him a fool for choosing a girl burdened with scandal. Others warned him of the wrath of her mother's in-laws. The in-laws themselves reacted with fury, storming into his home to confront him. "You dare to shame us!" One of them spat, his voice sharp with rage. "She is nothing but a curse. If you marry her, we will ruin you. We will destroy your family's land, your reputation, everything you own." Imran stood firm, his father beside him, though worried. "You have already ruined enough lives with your cruelty," he replied calmly. "Ayesha is not your possession. She is a human being with dignity, and I will not allow your threats to dictate my choices." His defiance was like a spark in dry grass. It spread quickly. Some villagers, tired of watching the in-laws' reign of terror, began to whisper in support of Imran. Quietly at first, but steadily, voices rose that said maybe he was right, maybe enough was enough. Yet others feared the consequences and stayed silent, their loyalty to power stronger than to justice. For Ayesha, every day became a test of strength. She endured insults thrown her way, mocking laughter and cruel words that tried to remind her of her so-called place. But every time she faltered, Imran was there, reminding her that she was not alone. Together they began to dream, not of wealth or luxury, but of a small home filled with peace, a place where her mother could heal without fear. Still, shadows loomed. Her mother's health was fragile, and the stress of the ongoing conflict often left her weak and breathless. One evening, as Ayesha sat beside her, tears welled in her eyes. "Ami, I don't know if I can do this. Everyone is against us. What if I bring more pain into your life?" Her mother lifted a trembling hand, stroking her daughter's face. "No, Beta. For the first time, I see light in your eyes again. You are not alone anymore. Don't let fear steal this chance. Fight for your happiness the way you have always fought for me." Those words became Ayesha's strength. She began to walk with her head higher, not hiding from the village stairs anymore. The humiliation of the past still scarred her heart, but she no longer allowed it to define her. She was not just a daughter protecting her mother. She was a woman who had found courage in love. The day Imran's family finally came to formally ask for Ayesha's hand was one of mixed emotions. Some villagers gathered to watch, curiosity painted on their faces. Whispers filled the air. Would her mother's in-laws stop it? Would they create chaos? But Imran's father stood tall, declaring proudly that his son's decision was one he supported wholeheartedly. "This marriage," he said, "is not a shame but an honor. My son has chosen a woman of strength and dignity. We stand with him no matter who stands against us." The older woman, Ayesha's mother, wept quietly, her hands raised in silent prayer. For years she had been treated as a burden, a target of cruelty. Now she was witnessing her daughter being chosen not in spite of their struggles, but because of the strength born from them. But true peace was not yet theirs. On the night before the wedding, her mother's in-laws made their last attempt. They came with threats, with venom in their words, trying to convince Ayesha to back out. "Do you really think he will stay with you when he realizes the trouble you bring?" They sneered. "Marriages built on pity never last." Ayesha looked them in the eyes, her voice calm but unshakable. "This marriage is not built on pity. It is built on courage, respect, and love. Things you will never understand. You may have broken us once, but you will not break us again." For the first time they had no reply. They left in anger, but deep down they knew they had lost. The next morning, as the sun rose over the village, Ayesha stood in a simple dress, her mother by her side, tears of joy in her eyes. Imran arrived not with wealth or grandeur, but with a promise to build a life of dignity and peace together. When he placed the wedding garland around her neck and declared her his bride, the weight of years of pain lifted from her heart. The villagers watched in silence, some still skeptical, others quietly moved. But none could deny the courage it took for two souls to stand against the tide of cruelty and choose each other anyway. As the day ended, Ayesha sat beside Imran, her mother resting peacefully nearby. For the first time in years, she felt safe. She turned to him, whispering softly, "You gave me back more than hope. You gave me a future." Imran smiled, taking her hand in his. "No, Ayesha, you already had the courage. I only walked beside you." Married life did not bring instant peace, but it brought something far more precious, unity. For the first time, Ayesha and her mother felt they had someone to lean on, someone who shared their burdens instead of adding to them. Their home was modest, 2 small rooms with a courtyard shaded by an old tree, but for Ayesha, it felt like a palace compared to the fear-filled house she had left behind. In those early days, happiness came in small moments, laughter shared over a simple meal, her mother's smile returning as she watched them together, evenings when Imran read poetry aloud under the dim light of a lantern. Yet beyond those walls, the world was still harsh. Her mother's in-laws spread venomous rumors, whispering that Ayesha had trapped Imran with her tears, that their marriage was doomed, that no man of honor would have chosen her. Some villagers still avoided them, afraid to be caught in the crossfire of old grudges, but Ayesha refused to bow under gossip anymore. Instead, she poured her energy into building a new life. She helped Imran in the fields, her hands blistered but determined. She stitched clothes for neighbors in exchange for small earnings. Slowly, with Imran's encouragement, she even started teaching a few local children how to read and write. Education is freedom, she would tell them, remembering her own struggle. Soon, their little courtyard became alive with the sound of children's laughter and learning. Imran's pride in her grew with each passing day. "You are stronger than anyone I know," he often told her. And though she smiled, deep inside, Ayesha still carried scars, memories of her mother's cries, of her own helplessness. Sometimes at night, she would wake trembling, haunted by the past. On those nights, Imran would take her hand and whisper, "The past cannot hurt you anymore. We are writing a new story now." But life tested them again when her mother's health declined suddenly. Years of stress and suffering had left deep wounds in her body. One evening, as she struggled to breathe, Ayesha rushed her to the small clinic in the town nearby. The doctor's words chilled her. "She needs proper treatment, more than what this village clinic can provide. Without it, she may not recover." The cost of treatment was far beyond their means. Ayesha felt the ground slip beneath her feet. For years she had fought to save her mother, and now when she finally had a chance at a new life, fate seemed cruel again. She broke down in Imran's arms, sobbing, "I can't lose her. She's all I have." Imran held her tightly, his own eyes burning with determination. "Then we will do whatever it takes. I will work day and night. We will find a way." True to his word, Imran took on extra labor in the fields, working until his hands bled. Ayesha stitched clothes late into the night, refusing to let exhaustion defeat her. Together, they scraped every coin they could, but it was not enough. It was then that something unexpected happened. The very children Ayesha had been teaching brought their parents to her home. One by one, families came forward, offering small amounts of money, grain, or help. "You gave our children knowledge," one mother said softly. "Now let us give you what we can." Ayesha was overwhelmed. For so long, she had felt like an outcast, abandoned by her community. Now, because of the seeds of kindness she had planted, help was returning to her in ways she had never imagined. Tears filled her eyes as she accepted their support, whispering prayers of gratitude. With the combined efforts, her mother was able to receive treatment. The road to recovery was slow, but with care and love, her strength began to return. Each day she grew a little brighter, watching her daughter and son-in-law fight for her life as if it were their own. One morning, as she walked slowly into the courtyard, leaning on Ayesha for support, she smiled and said, "I thought I was a burden, but you showed me I am still worth fighting for." Ayesha hugged her tightly, whispering, "Always, Amy, always." Yet the in-laws were not finished with their cruelty. Enraged that Ayesha had found happiness, and that the community was beginning to respect her, they plotted to tarnish her reputation again. They spread lies that the money for her mother's treatment had been stolen, that Ayesha and Imran were deceiving villagers for personal gain. For a while, whispers returned, poisoning the air. Ayesha felt her old fears creeping back. What if people believed the lies? But this time, she was not alone. The parents of the children she taught stood by her, defending her character. One father raised his voice in the village square, declaring, "This woman gave our children a chance at education. She and her husband worked with honesty. Enough of these lies." Others nodded in agreement, silencing the slander. For the first time, Ayesha's mothers-in-laws realized their grip over the village was slipping. Their words no longer carried the same power. They had underestimated the quiet strength of the girl they once tried to break. That night, Ayesha sat with Imran under the old tree in their courtyard. The stars glimmered above, and a soft breeze carried the scent of earth. She rested her head on his shoulder, her voice tender but filled with gratitude. "Do you know what you gave me, Imran? Not just love, not just a home. You gave me the courage to believe I deserve happiness." Imran kissed her hand gently. "You already had that courage. You only needed someone to remind you." Her heart swelled with peace, though she knew life would never be free of challenges. But now challenges no longer terrified her. They only made her stronger. For the first time in years, she looked to the future not with fear, but with hope. Seasons changed, and with them Ayesha's world. What began as a fight for survival slowly blossomed into a life of meaning. Her mother's health improved, her laughter returning in gentle bursts, as though she was learning to live again. Imran's presence had transformed their lives, but even more, Ayesha herself had grown into a woman who now carried courage like armor and hope like a flame. But life had one final test waiting. A powerful landowner in the nearby town, who had ties with her mother's in-laws, approached Imran with threats. "Leave her," he demanded coldly. "You think you can stand against families like ours? We'll crush you, your crops, your home, everything. End this marriage before it destroys you." For a moment, Imran felt the weight of fear press down on him. But when he looked at Ayesha, her head held high, her mother smiling faintly behind her, his fear turned to steel. He faced the man without flinching. "You can burn my fields, you can destroy my home, but you will never destroy the bond we share. My marriage is not a deal to be broken by your threats. My life belongs with her, and no power in this world will change that." The confrontation shook the village. People watched closely, waiting to see what would happen, and slowly something remarkable unfolded. Families who had once stayed silent began to speak out. They too had suffered under the weight of cruelty and power, but seeing Ayesha and Imran stand firm lit a spark in them. One by one, voices rose, not just in defense of Ayesha, but in defiance of the injustice that had gripped the village for years. Her in-laws, once feared, now found themselves isolated. Their words no longer carried weight, their cruelty no longer inspired obedience. The tide had turned, not through wealth or force, but through the courage of two people who refused to bow down. For Ayesha, it was more than victory. It was justice for every tear she had shed, every wound her mother had endured. Standing in the village square, surrounded by neighbors who now looked at her not with pity, but with respect, she realized she had broken free from chains that once seemed unshakable. Her mother, watching from the edge of the crowd, whispered softly to herself, "She saved me, and in saving me, she saved herself." Tears glistened in her eyes, but they were tears of pride. Life after that was not perfect, but it was real. Imran and Ayesha worked side by side in their fields, teaching the value of dignity and honesty. Their little courtyard school grew, with more children coming each week. Slowly, their home became a place where dreams were nurtured, and hope was planted like seeds in fertile soil. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, Ayesha would sit beside her mother, combing through what little hair had grown back, and smile. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer defined her. Instead, they reminded her of how far she had come. One night, as the stars stretched endlessly above them, Ayesha turned to Imran and said, "Do you remember the day you told my mother you would make me your bride?" He chuckled softly, squeezing her hand. "How could I forget? I thought my heart would burst from the weight of those words. And yet," she whispered, "those words changed everything. They gave me the strength to believe that even broken people can be rebuilt, that love can heal even the deepest wounds." Imran looked at her with a tenderness that words could never capture. "Ayesha, you were never broken. You were tested, yes, but your spirit, it was always unbreakable. I only stood beside you while you discovered it." She leaned her head against his shoulder, her heart swelling with gratitude. For so long, she had thought survival was the only gift life would ever allow her. But now she realized she had found something far greater, a love that turned pain into power and despair into dignity. Her story, once whispered in pity, became a beacon in the village. Mothers told their daughters about her courage. Fathers spoke of Imran's defiance with pride. Children looked at her not as a victim, but as a teacher, a warrior of love and strength. And as the years went on, the lesson of Ayesha's life became clear, that even in the darkest of nights, a single act of courage can spark a light that no cruelty can extinguish, for she had saved her mother, yes, But in doing so, she had also saved herself, her love, and the belief that dignity is worth fighting for, no matter the cost.